This is Have You Met? My guest today is a doctor, passionate climber, trans-medium explorer, and astronaut. While in medical school, he competed on the US development luge team and was ranked among the top 10 in the nation. He's travelled more than 23 million miles in space across 5 missions, conducting 7 spacewalks in the process. He's the first person ever to have been to space and summited the world's tallest mountain, Mount Everest. His memoir, The Sky Below, a true story of summits, space, and speed, is available to buy via links in the description. Have you met Scott Parazynski? So, Scott, how would you have reacted as a child if I told you, or if somebody told you, you'd told yourself, that you'd go on to fly 5 missions to space, spend 47 hours on spacewalks, and climb Mount Everest?
Well, I don't know about some of the latter stuff, but certainly my childhood dreams and ambitions all centered around flying in space one day. And so I guess with childhood imagination and not seeing limits in life, I would have said, oh, okay, well, that's what I was meant to do. But I look back on it and I'm so grateful, to have had the opportunities and the support from my parents and, the education, all the things that kind of led me to actually be able to live out that dream. But as a kid, the world is, a full opportunity without boundaries. And that's the beauty of being a child, is not seeing limits. And so that's, when I talk to young people today, that's one of the things that I often talk about. Is it's so important to have huge dreams as a kid, but then to have the courage to get out there and work towards them, because they can come true if it takes probably some luck, but it definitely takes a lot of hard work too.
Yeah. That's very true. So you always wanted to be an astronaut since you were a kid. Was there ever a time you didn't before that? Did you ever have a different dream?
I'm sure I did. I can't recall what those other dreams were, but I think every kid, wants to be an astronaut at some point, wants to be a fireman, a policeman, dinosaur hunter.
My version was a bin collection guy, a dustbin man. I don't know what the technical word for them is now, but I genuinely wanted that when I was a kid. I was like, I really want to be the guy that jumps on the back of that lorry. And
that's an exciting job. Yeah, you're riding out there in the breeze. Yeah, that would be an adventure for sure.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, the things that kind of catch your eye that look adventurous, exciting. So yeah, you jump around to different things, but always one that always came back to the forefront was one day flying in space. And of course, when I was a kid, this was during the Apollo program, when we first sent astronauts to the moon in the late 60s, early 70s. So time would stop when there was a launch. And so every kid on the block, wanted to be an astronaut back in those days.
Yeah, I bet it was. I think we're going to enter a new age like that soon, with all the new stuff happening with Mars and the moon coming back,
right,
and all of that going, and tourism up there too. It's going to be big. But one last little thing about your childhood, because I read on your website that you were kind of spent a bit of time all around. Like you did a bit of time in Iran, Greece, I think, Lebanon, and maybe a few other, Senegal, was it?
Right.
How and why and what was that kind of experience like?
Well, I feel so fortunate to have had that, opportunity to see the world as a kid, and also to appreciate that life's greatest lessons come from outside the classroom. It's the adventures that you have, the opportunities that you take, the people, the discussions that you have, the cultures that you can interact with. Just opens up your mind to so many different opportunities. But my father worked for the Boeing Airplane Company.
Oh, wow. Okay.
All through his career, and that took us to some really exciting, exotic overseas locations. And so instead of kind of a traditional, schooling through high school in the United States, we were traveling all over the world. I was an only child, so we had the flexibility to pick up and move, and it was amazing. We had to evacuate Beirut, Lebanon, during the Civil War, and then at the beginning of the Islamic Revolution in Iran, we had to evacuate again. So I was thrown out of 2 countries, not just one. So that was pretty cool as a young kid to be a part of living history.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. How old were you roughly when you were doing all that kind of moving around, and or was it very spaced out?
No, it was all kind of condensed. So I believe I moved overseas when I was about 9 or 10 years of age, all the way through to graduation in high school, so around 18. And so, yeah, I had a number of years, living in these exotic places and getting a chance to travel the world. So
Yeah, so you got a taste for long distance traveling,
I
and
did.
then I guess space was the natural evolution of that in a way. Um, but yeah, so how did you go from obviously being like a lot of the other kids and say, I want to be an astronaut, I'd love to be an astronaut, that's the dream. How did it start to become a reality? How did you kind of put all the pieces together, and what was that process like? I know it's an incredibly long one, but in a kind of summarized way.
Well, there's probably a common denominator that led to some of my success in life, but um, I I wasn't necessarily the greatest student up until high school. I just was kind of a lazy, um, you know, take it all in kind of a kid.
Yeah.
But I realized my freshman year of high school that if I wanted to have a life of adventure, to travel the world, to do exciting, important things, I needed to get a good education. I needed to go to one of the best universities. In order to do that, I needed to start, getting straight A's. And so almost overnight, I went from, being a B minus, back in the classroom kind of kid to straight A's. Still don't know how that epiphany came to me. And then another experience that really I think set me up for success was participation in the Boy Scouts.
Right.
And I don't know if you ever were part of the Scouts, but it's a long process to get to the highest rank. And in the United States version of the Boy Scouts, the Eagle Scout Award is the I think it's the King's or the Queen's badge for the UK there. But the Eagle Scout Award, it takes several years and lots of merit badges and service projects and all these things. And a lot of my friends would get discouraged, oh, this is too hard, it's going to take too long. But I ended up mentally preparing myself for this challenge by just focusing on the next merit badge and the next task to and developed a sense of resilience and focus to get where I wanted to be. And that has repeatedly been a huge asset to me in my career, becoming a physician, doctor, going to the top of Everest, any kind of long fought struggle to get someplace, you have to be able to break it down into manageable, achievable successes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I bet, like you said, I bet you've had so many of those because all the things you've done, or not all of them, but the big three, let's say for now, that going into space, Everest, and being a medical doctor, like they're all things that take a long time to prepare for and to do. And space particularly, I would imagine, is just, there's so many different boxes you have to tick, and it all adds up into this massively long winding road of essential things, I suppose.
Yep. Yeah, and I would say it prepared me especially well to become an entrepreneur. And I tell people all the time, the hardest thing I've ever done is actually, found and grow a company. It's such a difficult path, and people who hear of these overnight successes and overnight IPOs and all this stuff. No, it's really hard, tedious work that requires incredible resilience and a huge, breadth of skills that I didn't have when I started. Still working on them to perfect them, but being a startup founder is a really tough thing too.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, most of them fail, don't they? That's the easy thing to forget. Like the vast majority, the overwhelming majority would fail probably quite quickly. But we'll come back to that, your business, hopefully if we get the time. But to stick onto space for a little bit, because I'm fascinated by this, and you're the first astronaut I've got the opportunity to speak to, the honor to speak to. So I'm really chuffed about this. But again, there's like thousands of questions that anybody could think of, right, to ask about space. And I'm sure you've heard them all thousands of times.
We'll see. Yeah.
But I mean, this one is going to be definitely one you've heard. But just tell me about your first like launch experience and like the build up to it and what it's like sitting in your seat, kind of waiting for the countdown, and just that whole thing. What was that like?
Well, gosh, it is a life-changing experience, and I guess I'll jump ahead to say that I think we live in very exciting times when many companies are now looking to take many more of us up into space than have had an opportunity in the past. Companies like Virgin Galactic, Blue Origin, SpaceX, and others in development will be able to take many more than just the few hundred that have been able to experience space in the last 60 years. So
yeah.
But from my experience, having flown now on 5 space shuttle missions, it's just an extraordinary sense of power. There's noise, there's vibration, there's adrenaline, anticipation. You've trained for up to 2 years before your flight, and it comes down to 8.5 minutes, going from 0 miles an hour on your back on the pad to weightlessness. Traveling at 17,500 miles an hour, and seeing continents in a single glance, and traveling around the world at 90 minutes, for one full orbit. You get strapped into the vehicle about 2 hours before the launch. You're on your back, of course, because that's the direction you're headed. And it's a little bit nerve-wracking. That there's 7 million pounds of thrust that needs to all be pointed in the right direction to get you off the planet. So you hope everyone tightened all the wrenches, to the right torque, and everything works per plan. But we perform leak checks and some basic procedures to make sure that it's safe to go. But at about 10 seconds before the launch, the water deluge system beneath the orbiter starts to flow, and you hear that rumbling beneath you. And that's there so that when the main rocket engines ignite, we don't actually rattle off all of the tiles in the belly of the orbiter, and we don't damage the launch tower, because the shock waves from these engines are just so enormous. They would actually destroy the launch tower around us.
Yeah. Wow.
And 6 seconds before the launch, the 3-man engines on the tail of the shuttle will ignite, and they throttle up, and the computers on board sense that they're working properly. Those 2 white solid rocket motors on either side of the shuttle would ignite, and you are going to leave town in a hurry. I mean, by the time we clear the launch tower, we're already going 100 miles an hour. So it's just an incredible sense of acceleration. Amazing. Three times your normal body weight, squeezing you back into your seat. And you just have this enormous grin on your face. It's sort of like the steepest part of the steepest roller coaster you've ever been on in your entire life, except the ride lasts for 8.5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's how long you're feeling the acceleration.
And there's no track.
There's no track. Yeah. So you hope it's pointed in the right direction. But it's an amazing thing to achieve main engine cutoff, or MECO, and to see the full curvature of the Earth in front of you, the blackness of space overhead, and the beautiful blue planet beneath you. Yeah. By the time we get out of our seats, we're already over Europe. It's
amazing, isn't it? It's just amazing. So we've done your first launch, and then you're into space, or you're nearly there, and you look down, you see the curvature, like you say, you see this amazing planet, this amazing sight looking back at you. And obviously lots of astronauts have talked about having this kind of epiphany in that moment. Maybe not in that moment necessarily, but in the moments of looking back at planet Earth, this in a way life-changing or life-affirming or life-altering moment. Did you have that at any point, whether it was when you first looked back or whether it was on one of your other missions? But have you had that moment of looking at Earth and being like, oh, now I get it. Now I see things differently, or anything like that?
Absolutely. It's we call this framework that you're talking about, the overview effect, to be able to see your planet from a sort of a God's eye view, without lines that depict boundaries or dots that depict, there's London, there's New York.
Yeah.
It's a confluence, of humanity as well as nature. 70% of the planet is water. This planet should be called ocean as opposed to Earth, but it's an extraordinary kind of out of body experience, and you see the paper thin nature of our atmosphere, and you feel so grateful that for this gift of life, and to look out into the enormity of the universe and just with a sense of wonder, what else is out there? Who else is out there? I don't know that we've ever been visited by little green men or anything, but you have to think that probably life does exist elsewhere. And so it's a extraordinary personal experience that I hope you get a chance to experience someday, and your listeners do as well. Everyone comes back from the experience at a minimum, at least to some degree, an environmentalist. You see how fragile our planet is, and humanity's toll on it as well. From bilge dumping in the oceans to jet contrails to deforestation and burning. So, you're flooded with senses and emotion.
Yeah, I bet it's. Well, I'd love to experience it, like you said. I really hope one day. I don't know. I'm not holding my breath for it, but maybe. You never know. Like we said, these companies are really turning up the heat, aren't they, with the frequency of these flights? And I do think probably in my lifetime, space tourism will be a fairly normalized thing at some point. It'll probably become, or at least in the next 50 years or so, I would expect.
I think within the next 5. One of my friends, Cyan Proctor, is going to be flying on this mission called Inspiration 4. It's a trip funded by, granted, a billionaire, but he's flying himself and then 3 other civilians to benefit St. Jude's Hospital, Cancer Research Hospital. So he's Jared,
Isaac or something, Isaac like that.
Yeah, and he's flying Haley Arsenault, who's a cancer survivor.
Wow.
Another person, Chris Sombrowski, won a lottery. He's one of the donors to St. Jude's, and he won a ticket because of his participation in the lottery. And Cyan, my friend, won because of her entrepreneurship and longstanding passion for spaceflight. So, this is kind of the first stages of it. There are other companies like Axiom that are going to be taking, initially billionaires up into space, but ultimately, the ticket prices and the destinations are going to be, more accessible, and we may even, live and work off of the planet, whether it's on an orbiting, space laboratory or someplace on the moon.
It's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of Mars and SpaceX and Elon Musk's plans to kind of colonize up there? He wants to be there, doesn't he? In the next 5-10 years, he wants to go there. Well, not him personally, but
I think it's very likely. In fact, almost a certainty that we will have at least explorers there. Elon's, ambition, as I understand it, is to die on Mars. So
I've heard that as well.
Not only go visit it, but to colonize it. He wants to send 100 people at a time on his spacecraft to go colonize the red planet, which I think is extraordinary vision, and he certainly is putting all of his energies towards that goal. And I think it's really audacious. The challenge, however, is that Mars isn't naturally that conducive to sustaining human life. So what I mean by that is there's not much of a magnetic field on Mars. So to actually live on Mars, we'd probably have to live underground because of radiation protection. So we're looking into utilization of lava tubes, actually, these things exist on Earth as well, but so we can study analogs here on Earth, and they exist on the moon as well as Mars. But that would be an environment where we could actually build habitats and, of course, come out and explore and do things. But in terms of long-term habitation, we'd have to shield ourselves and be subterranean. So that takes some of the allure out of traveling 7 to 9 months to get to a place where we're going to have to bury ourselves under the regolith. But
I'd be going for that sandy sunset, I think. So
sorry,
I'd be going for the sandy sunset, and I wouldn't get to enjoy it underground. So it'd be a bit sad.
That's what we want to go for. Is every place looks like it's the Grand Canyon, so you'd want to go see all that stuff. But I think it's going to be more difficult than we think. Getting there, I think we have the technology almost today to go there, but to colonize and live off of the land, we still have a lot to learn. And so one of the things that NASA wants to do is to go to the South Pole of the moon, actually, where there is water ice in the hidden, the shadowed craters of the South Pole of the moon. Extract that water for plant growth, for oxygen generation, things like that. Learn how to kind of sustain oneself, maintain an outpost. And once we learn those lessons, then go to colonize.
Unfortunately, they might find Elon already there, mightn't they?
I don't know. So I think
it's going to be interesting, though. Yeah,
the government will probably be the primary funder. So I think that the U.S. government and NASA will probably kind of set the pace of how we eventually get there. But we'll see.
Yeah, they'll probably try and keep him in check a little bit when they rein him in. But so going back to your experiences and things like that, I was just so amazed to read that you'd done 7 spacewalks, isn't it? 7 spacewalks, which is like 47 hours you spent just out in space. That's
it's
a
the
lot.
best part of the job. It's a wonderful. I tell people it's the best job in the universe to get a chance to get outside in your own personal spaceship, and you just have a thin visor between you and the enormity of the universe. It's you really feel like you're king of the world, but it's hard work out there as well. So you're in a pressurized spaceship. Basically, you're in your own personal spaceship. You have to have all of the protection and life support and power and communication that you would have in a spacecraft, a space station, or a space shuttle built around you. So in your backpack you've got carbon dioxide removal and oxygen tanks and electrical power and radios and circulatory system to cool your body, lights and cameras on your spacesuit, a jet backpack. There's a lot of technology that goes into getting out
works.
There. Yep.
That's amazing. And I've heard it's really hard to kind of move around up there. When I don't know if this is true, but really exhausting to just make small movements and things like that because it's so heavy. And the movement's quite constricting. Is that right, or am I way off base?
Yeah, so it's very massive. So all told, myself in a spacesuit, my mass is about 650 pounds, and so if you get going really quickly, it can be very difficult to stop yourself. So you have to think about the way in which you move, and you try and be as smooth and controlled as possible. And so to see a skilled spacewalker, it's very graceful. It's a very smooth, coordinated, kind of an activity. But it's interesting to conversely watch some of the rookie astronauts, especially right after you get up into orbit. They let themselves undo their seatbelt, and then they push off with all their might, and they hit their head on the ceiling or whatever. So you have to kind of slow down and be very deliberate in all the things that you do, because you're in a different world. Gravity is still impacting us. We can still feel the gravitational tug towards Earth because we're in a kind of a free fall around Earth. And we do have mass and inertia, but yeah, you just have to learn how to behave up there.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I bet like you must have, I know you've got one particular story from doing spacewalks. I don't know if you've got any other ones that are worth sharing, but I'd love to hear, was it the solar panel, something to do with the solar panel where it didn't go entirely to plan, or it was just a bit of a dangerous one or something like that?
Yeah, no, all sorts of great, experiences from my spacewalks. But yeah, the one that you're talking about on my last mission to the International Space Station. This was in November of 2007, STS-120. We had just installed, actually relocated a large solar array truss element to the very tip of the space station. And we had bolted it all together. We had made it electrical connectors, and the crew was commanding solar panel wings at the very tip of the space station to unfurl. And this was critical because future European and Japanese modules needed the power from this element to power it. And so the first one went out okay, but the second one, as it was being commanded open, began to snag. And we didn't know it at the time, but it was actually beginning to rip apart. And so they stopped the procedure. Myself and my partner, Doug Wheelock, were already inside the airlock, getting out of our spacesuits when this was all happening. But we zoomed in with our camera systems and saw that this thing had ripped apart. And so the solar panel out there at the very end of the space station was kind of a limp noodle and very dangerous to us, because if we were to undock the space shuttle at this point, it could rip apart. We could lose it entirely. It could hit the shuttle. It could cause significant damage to us, space station crew. So, one of the beautiful things about the NASA team is its capacity to take these incredibly daunting challenges and find elegant, brilliant solutions to deal with it. And so that's exactly what NASA did. In the next 72 hours, they came up with a plan to get us out to the very tip of the space station on this ungainly robotic arm coupled together system, for me to cut out a piece of guide wire that had become snarled, it had frayed, and had caused this rip, and then to install several repairs across the damaged site so that the solar panel could be fully extended, and we could support the European and Japanese modules that were about to launch in the next missions. So this was like a Hail Mary play. I mean, I've talked about it in a couple of minutes, but this is like, the extraordinary amount of innovation that took place over 3 days to come up with this wild plan that no one had ever thought of before, using tools that had never been, conjured up before, and robotic trajectories that had never been thought up before, and then to have to actually work on a fully energized solar panel, which could be quite dangerous. So we had to be able to figure out ways to do that safely.
Wow. And it went to plan?
Yeah, it went exactly to plan. I couldn't believe it, actually. I thought I gave us about a 50% wager that things would work out. But what I did know going out on that particular spacewalk is that if Plan A didn't work, we'd come back inside. There would be a Plan B and a Plan C, whatever. But eventually get something done. But it was really a home run. With come up with.
No, that's amazing. I think that's a big part of NASA and of space travel in general, isn't it? Is doing things for the first time and figuring out how to do them. By coincidence, I watched a film last night, Hidden Figures. I don't know if you've seen it. I assume you have. Yeah, really great. Really enjoyed it. And there was some moments where he's telling his assistant or his help, his team, about how it's not about mastering the maths that we've got and all this kind of thing. It's about finding new maths to fit this problem, or even old maths that you haven't considered, to reapply it and change it to work on this. And that's wonderful that you're talking about exactly the same thing. And it's like on in another film, I know it's based on a very true story. The film, I know the film. I grew up with the film. I wasn't alive when it happened, Apollo 13. And again, it's all about thinking outside the box and those last minute, those last second, just unbelievable minds, really, isn't it?
Yeah, not to be constrained by preconceived notions. You've got a problem, and what are the possible solutions? Let's consider them all and pick the best one. And so that was Apollo 13. That was STS-120 in a lot of ways as well. Very proud of the entire team. Everybody, I think, who worked on that mission would tell you that it was probably their best day on the job ever. Certainly among the best days on the job ever for all of us.
Yeah, I bet. So are there any other stories or anecdotes or things that have your experiences from your time or your times in space that maybe you haven't had the opportunity to talk that much about, or that aren't, things you get asked about 100 times a day? Are there any slightly below the surface things that you can think of right now?
Well, sure. I mean,
on the spot.
But I guess one of the things that I'd want to leave your listeners with is just the notion of how extraordinary and beautiful our planet is. And so one of the amazing things that you can experience on a spacewalk, granted, there's a lot of work to do, and you're down in the trenches, turning wrenches and building things, repairing things. But every once in a while, you have the opportunity to look up, and there are the Andes or the Himalayas, or the Aurora Australis, the Southern Lights. And I remember one time I was out on a spacewalk with Chris Hadfield. We were installing the Canada arm to the International Space Station, and I had to wait for a bit for Chris to finish a task. And so I had half of an orbit just to look at our planet while outside on a spacewalk. And I was just there, staring at Earth, mesmerized for half of a lap of our planet, and being able to see the Southern Lights, just holding on, with my fingertips, traveling at 17,500 miles an hour, and flying through this curtain of light that extended up 300 plus miles into the night sky. It was just extraordinary, and so I hope that all of humanity in the future gets an opportunity to experience this. And it may sound like science fiction now, but I do think that at some point in the future, air travel will convert into space travel. We'll be able to board a space plane in Heathrow and be in Narita, Tokyo in 40 minutes. To fly high and then re-enter. So I just am very excited for a day when all of us can appreciate the fragility of our planet, see the beauty of it, and then work together to protect it.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, I don't find it hard to imagine, like you say, like the jets that in the future going to space and space travel basically being mixable with air travel. The thing that frustrates me, I guess, or I find hard to believe, is that I wish we could put the same focus or an equal focus or whatever more, if anything, just to sort out the mess we've got here. That's the thing that gets me. And this, I think, is inevitable. I think space travel is just going to advance because there's money in it for people that are rich right now, I guess, in some ways. I do think it's very necessary and fascinating to explore what's out there. And I think we should be doing it. I just wish we were doing more to, like you said, look after the fragile Earth we've got right now. But
one thing I would say is that by doing difficult things, we inevitably learn, important lessons, discover extraordinary technologies that can be leveraged here on Earth. And so, the reason we do explore in the first place is because, granted, it's our human nature to want to understand, but it's also an investment in planet Earth. And so when we go up to the International Space Station to do research, it's focused on how can we develop technologies that are going to improve life here on Earth. So, I think that by pressing the boundaries in space technology, we definitely, improve our odds of success here on Earth as well.
Yeah. And the more people that can see Earth through the lenses of, how fragile it is and how it's all one place and all that kind of thing, the better, I suppose, the more people see it like that.
Yeah.
Hopefully, this guy that's going up next month has a nice glimpse of it like that and and comes back and decides to make some real differences down here, because I'm sure he could.
Yep.
So we're not going to have really much time to jump into Everest and everything that I wanted to, but just to briefly skim onto that subject. You came back from your last mission in 2007 and you went and climbed the tallest mountain on Earth in 2009. Was it like something you'd always wanted to do, or was it, you'd hung up your space suit and you had an itching to go and do something else like epic, if there's no better word that pops to mind? What was that like?
Yeah, so I had been a climber since my teens. So I'd spent a lot of time in high mountains. I love high lofty places, I suppose, but I took my first attempt on Everest in 2008, failed to reach the summit because of a ruptured disc in my lumbar spine at around 24,000 feet above sea level. So terrible place to get injured, but I came back home, had surgery, of course, and then was able to summit in 2009. And also fulfillment of a boyhood dream. The things that I read about as a kid, it was all about exploration, polar exploration, mountain exploration, space and undersea exploration, Jacques Cousteau. And so, it was an amazing life experience. And I think very meaningful to me because I didn't make it the first time. It took 2 tries to achieve the summit. And what I tell people is the things that come to us the hardest in life are the things that tend to mean the most to us. And that was definitely the case for me with Everest.
Yeah. I'm fascinated by Everest and by the high mountains. And I've spoken to a few people that have done them. And you're the first person to have ever been to space and summit Everest. A couple of weeks ago, I spoke to the first blind person to climb Everest. And I love it. Everybody has their own battle on that mountain. I think it's amazing. So then to just skim into Fluidity, right? Before, again, I'm just trying to get in a few last minute things into this chat before I let you go. So tell me a little bit about your company that you founded, and tell us what it's all about, what your plans are.
Yeah, well, so I'm a physician by training. When I left NASA, I was a chief technology officer at a medical research institute, and was looking for areas where we could make a difference. And I saw how clunky the controls for surgical robotics were. And being a pilot and, a roboticist, having flown the robotic arm on the space station, and having lived in space and, understanding how to move in 3-dimensional space with precision, came up with technologies that would allow us to move assets through physical and virtual worlds with much greater precision and intuitive ease. And so that then became my current company, Fluidity Technology. So we develop hand controllers that allow for almost subconscious movement through physical and virtual space. So whether it's a drone, an electric flying car, or one day for surgical robotics. So very exciting realm to be in.
Yeah.
One of the things that gets me really excited is, can we have a surgeon here in Houston be able to teleoperate in sub-Saharan Africa, for example, where I used to live, to be able to deliver the same high quality care there as we have here in my hometown. And we live at a great time when we can leverage technology and access to the communications and power around the world to be able to help people everywhere. So.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing. I'm going to be really excited to watch it as it grows, I suppose, and as you continue to hopefully be at the cutting edge and push it forward. That's amazing though. The idea of being able to perform an operation or whatever in a completely different place, in another place remotely. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So does that take up most of your time now? Or I know you're still adventuring as well. You went and did a volcano thing recently and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, the next big adventure, my wife and I are going to be joining Ocean Gate this summer. My good friend Stockton Rush, who's the CEO of the company, is taking an expedition to the Titanic. He's built 4,000 meter class that allow up to 5 people at a time to go to extreme depth, to include the Titanic. So we'll hopefully get a chance to cruise around the wreck of the Titanic.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that's not bad. Not bad summer plans.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So last question, or it's not really a question. It's just really a thing, it's something I wanted to mention to you. Earlier we kind of touched on there being other life out there, and I fully agree with you. I think it's virtually, it's as close as to a fact without having, the fact written down to as it can be. There's just so much out there that there has to be. It's just how much and what kind of level of advancement is it at? And then the possibilities are endless. But I don't know whether you've been paying attention to any of these videos and stuff from the Navy and from the fighter pilots and all this kind of thing out in America, and this report, this UAP task force report that's due out in the next couple of days. I don't know whether you have any thoughts on that whole subject. And I know you mentioned Little Green Men, and I know that's I don't really look at it like that. I know that's used to be the thing, didn't it? Little Green Men and tinfoil hats and all that kind of thing. But do you look at this and do you think there could be something there? Do you look at this and think it's definitely terrestrial, or what are your thoughts on, those videos and the report and all this kind of thing?
Well, yeah, I'm looking at it from the same lens that you are probably. I've not personally had any kind of exposure to anything like that. I think it's important to keep an open mind for whatever there might be out there, but we don't have any verifiable proof that anything beyond our realm has visited us in any way. I think there are a lot of physical phenomena in nature and in technology that we perhaps don't fully understand, and there are programs that we don't know about, and so it'll be interesting to read this report. But as I tell people, if we had proof that there was life elsewhere in the solar system, NASA would have an unlimited budget. It would be great. But sadly, that's not the case. But my sense is that based on the work that astronomers have done to detect exoplanets, these are planetary bodies around distant stars. Planets are probably not the exception, but the rule.
Yeah.
Our common star, the sun, has 8 or 9 planets, depending on how you count them. If you count poor Pluto as a planet or not, but there are a number of planets around our generic star, but there are literally billions and billions of galaxies out there that probably each star of which has planets surrounding them. So if you run the odds, you have to think that not just life, but probably intelligent life has evolved elsewhere. Hopefully a lot more intelligent than ours.
Yeah. If they manage to evolve past the level we're at, I mean, I like to think that we would become more intelligent with time if we don't kill ourselves and the planet. But yeah, you're right. Hopefully more intelligent than us, and henceforth maybe less scary. But yeah, like you say, you run the odds, and there must be numerous, and then all it takes is one to be 500,000 years older than us, 1 million years older than us, which is nothing in terms of the greater time frame. So yeah, I think it's very much like you said, you have to keep open mind, and I'm fascinated by what's going on at the moment. I think it's really, really exciting stuff.
Yep, I agree.
One way or another, whichever way things go, whether it turns out that it was a naughty little company or a naughty big company or a government or whatever it is, it's going to be interesting. Mm-hmm. So anyway, look, Scott, I've taken up plenty of your time today. I really do appreciate this. Last thing then, I know I've said that probably 5 times, is I'm going to ask you, no pressure to do this, but if you've got a kind of message or some words of wisdom or just something from your experiences that you've taken that you'd like to spread to people, just an opportunity for you to give a couple of minutes or a few seconds or whatever you want of just, a platform for you to say whatever's on your mind.
Well, thank you. That's a very thoughtful, closeout. No, I think, this has been a very difficult year for all of us, living through the pandemic. But, some wonderful things have happened as well. It's strengthened our family bonds, perhaps, and helped us focus on what's most important in life. We ought to try and take those lessons with us as the world opens back up. But I guess just to leave you with one thought, it's probably pretty basic motherhood, but carpe diem. It's important to appreciate the gift of life and to make the most of the time that we have here, to not only enjoy it personally, but to do what you can to help others as well who are less fortunate. So that's kind of how I approach my life. I've had good fortune to be able to live out my boyhood dream, and I've had success in my career and in life and family, but trying to pay it forward the best we can.
Yeah, fully agree. Well said. Thank you again for this, Scott. Really, really appreciate it. Really enjoyed it, and hope you have a great day.
You as well.
Cheers,
Thanks,
Scott. Bye. I hope you enjoyed listening to my conversation with Scott Parazynski. If you did, please consider sharing with a friend. Please give both me and Scott a follow on social media, and if you want to know more about Scott, check out his book. All links are in the description. Thank you for listening. Be nice, be happy, be cool.